Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to our Talent Attraction webinar. Today we'll be diving into the key findings and takeaways from our latest DCI research report, Go Fish, How to Reel in Tomorrow's Talent, which was just released last week. I want to say that in addition to going over some of our latest research, we do want to use this webinar as an opportunity for you all listening in to ask questions and interact with us. So feel free to use that question function you see on GoToWebinar, and we'll be having an in-depth Q&A session after this presentation. But first, a little bit about us and who's on the call. We are the co-authors of DCI's research report on talent attraction. My name is Rebecca Gaiman. I oversee DCI's talent attraction services, and I'm also an account director at DCI. And I'm joined here today by DCI's Vice President of Research, Robin Dahmer.
Hi, everyone.
And a quick word about DCI. We have been the leader in place marketing since 1960, but it's only until somewhat recently that we've been seeing the increased need from our economic development clients, not only to market locations to attract investment, but to attract talent as well. And here on the screen, you'll see just a few of the clients we've had the opportunity to work with on talent attraction projects, ranging from media relations campaigns to websites to brands. And something that we've noticed with every single talent attraction program is that truly the best ones are rooted in research, which is why we've conducted the research really to help our clients and help other economic developers better market themselves to talent. And I'll turn it over to Robin now to explain why understanding talent is so important in today's climate.
Thanks, Rebecca. So welcome, everyone. As Rebecca mentioned, I'm sure you're all aware, but the current labor situation is clearly very tight, and it's not projected to really improve anytime soon. These are the headlines we're seeing on a daily basis, and it's not really surprising given that in May, the U.S. unemployment rate was 3.8%, and we haven't seen a rate like that since April 2000. So clearly, communities across the country, large and small, are feeling this pressure. And I think no matter who you speak to in the economic development field, the labor and the workforce shortages and the strategies to address those are going to come up in conversation. Talent attraction and retention has certainly become a key function of EDOs as they look to assist their local employers. So they've had to get a little creative. They've had to look for new sources and find new ways to market to their existing workforce as well as external workforce to meet these growing needs of employers. So as you'll see on the next slide, one of the things, really that, given the pressure felt by EDOs to come up with these new responses and strategies to the talent crisis, as I mentioned, they've really had to look at different sources of labor. And one question that we often get from clients is, how do we appeal to current students and recent graduates that are already in our area? And you can see here that as a result, what we did was we wanted to take a deeper dive into the decision-making process of kind of two key populations. It's interesting because one of them is the millennials, and while they make up a huge percentage of our population and are really projected to surpass baby boomers as the largest living generation in 2019, they have some of the lowest labor force participation rates, and that offers a real opportunity. And then right behind them, there's another influential group, that Gen Z. So we really wanted, again, to find out what drives their decision-making process. And so in order to do so, we looked at we surveyed 1,000 individuals that represented the oldest members of Gen Z and the youngest members of the millennial population to find out really what matters most when they're deciding where to live, how they make career decisions, the role of training programs, the role of internships. And while today's presentation provides the highlights of our findings, we hope you will go back after today's call and download the full report, and we'll certainly provide the link to do so at the end of the presentation. So first, let's take a look at how college students and recent graduates choose careers. And I think there are a few surprises regarding when and how career choices are made that are a little bit unexpected. So when I think, we often put the onus on colleges and universities to address the skills gap, we were a bit surprised to find that career choices are actually being made among a large subgroup of this population earlier than we would expect. You can see here that 34% of respondents reported that their interest in their career or their potential career actually began in high school. And, if anyone on the call has children in high school or knows any high schoolers, you've probably seen some of the activities and curriculums in place that are sort of incubating that interest. Meanwhile, you see another third of respondents, or just over a third, report that their career interests weren't established until college. And I think that's what a lot of us traditionally think, that that's where the foundation of future career paths are certainly fostered and laid out. And then there's a full 16% that say, they haven't really decided yet. So, it was interesting to see sort of that large percentage that you think they know the career path they'd like to follow early on in the process. You can see here, obviously, this does not equal to 100%, and the balance of respondents answered in two other ways. One was that it wasn't until after college that they were choosing their career path, and then another percentage just actually can't even recall when their interest in their career actually began. But I think the key takeaway here is that interest in careers begins in high school and much earlier than we actually anticipated. So knowing when interest in careers are forming, the next logical question is, what are the top factors influencing career choices? And in the survey itself, we provided a list of over 10 factors, but you can see here kind of the top three that rose to the top. First was the general interest in subject matter, which seems sort of an obvious choice. If you're not interested in the career, then you're probably not going to pursue it, moving on. What was a less expected factor to come in second was the job stability. And this was even more important than the earning potential, which we found very interesting. And I think we can attribute this a little bit to the fact that these populations remember the recession. They saw parents lose jobs. They saw rising unemployment at that time. And it is very important to them to have some sort of career stability over the long term. And I think, again, that sort of goes against the grain of what we think about this population, but clearly job stability is something that's they're concerned with. And of course, the earning potential is also very important, as this cohort is also more likely to be paying off student loans and faces, higher costs of living and housing costs. So obviously, they want to make sure that they're earning enough to kind of support the lifestyle they'd like to have in the future. Some of the other top factors we did see were flexible work environment and, just the ability to kind of create your own schedule. And again, those are all laid out in the final report. So while it appears that career paths are set earlier than we anticipated, and certainly influenced by certain factors, we were additionally surprised to see that a large majority of respondents are willing to undergo additional training in order to shift their career path. A full 73% of respondents said, yeah, I would be actually willing to continue my education and continue my training if it allowed me to shift into a completely different career trajectory than I had anticipated. So, that's great news. That's an opportunity again. However, the interesting thing was that only 44% said they were actually aware of training programs that were offered locally or online that would allow them to do so. So again, another opportunity to market those tools and strategies that could help guide these populations into different career trajectories. Clearly, the information is not reaching them, and the interest is there for them to sort of follow up on those. So once a career path has sort of been decided and they've evaluated where they would like to see their career going, how specifically is this cohort conducting their job search? And you can see on the next slide that we provided 10 different resources that are typically used and asked respondents to choose all those that they anticipate using or have used in their search for employment. You can see here that more than half respondents rely on personal connections as job search tools, just about evenly split between Gen Z and millennials. They rely on friend and family connections. And, this is certainly a path of least resistance, so again, not too surprising, but it is, those kind of personal connections are very important during their job search. Coming in second was the job aggregator websites. Monster, Indeed, Simply Hired, those are still tools that are being used heavily, particularly among millennials. It's a slightly lower percentage of the Gen Z population that are relying on these, but still a top tool for job searches among both groups. And then coming in third are the company and business websites. They're going directly to the employers themselves to find out the career opportunities available and doing their research that way. Not surprisingly, the specific college and university career office or online career portal is used more heavily by Gen Z, who are also more likely to be still enrolled in college or their university. So again, not surprisingly that they rely on it a little bit more than as a job search resource. So the next topic we wanted to cover was the role of internships. And it's interesting because here at DCI, we have a very strong internship program, and we always felt that this was a tool that worked very, very effectively in terms of growing talent internally. But when we asked how many respondents had actually had an internship, we were a little surprised. And we found that a full 65% of respondents had never had an internship. And as it can be such a powerful retention tool. So it's interesting to know that such a small proportion of respondents are actually using an internship as sort of an entry-level introduction into their career path, and it doesn't seem like it's fully being utilized as much as it potentially could. Among those that have held internships before, you can see that a full 37% either previously or are currently employed by the company where they held the internship, and 11% plan to pursue employment at the company. So again, this just sort of reinforces the value of internships and why they can be such a effective tool or strategy to kind of help retain your younger talent. So again, lots of opportunity there and an interesting kind of unexpected find regarding their role.
Great. Well, thanks, Robin. Now that we've shown you the research that helped us really understand what these generations are looking for when they're choosing careers and looking for jobs, we also wanted to show you the research findings we had on what they look for in locations. So we asked our respondents to say, where did they plan to look for employment opportunities after graduating? And a majority said, 36%, wherever I can find a job, which really underscores that this generation, like other generations that we've surveyed in the past, considers the job first, location second, and they're more than willing and likely to relocate to a new location if they have a quality job. It was surprising to see that a slim 13% said they were interested in looking for employment opportunities in the town where they attended college. And I want to point out that this might be a perception issue. There may be quality jobs in a college town, but the college students in your backyard simply may not know about them. In fact, when we asked a follow-up question to this and asked, why wouldn't you stay in the location you attended college, 30% said it was simply because they lacked the job opportunities in their field. We also wanted to understand what type of location was most appealing to millennials and Gen Z. And surprisingly, while the media headlines for the past few years have been about millennials ushering in an urban revival, it seems that that trend may actually have reached its peak. In fact, newly released census data confirms that while big cities are still gaining population, suburban growth is actually outpacing city growth. And I think what economic developers should take away from the findings you see here is that whether your location is suburban, urban, rural, or if your region has a mix of those. You have a fighting chance to appeal to millennials and Gen Z who are clearly open to a wide variety of location types, and there's a segment that's looking for a different type of location. We also wanted to understand exactly what qualities or factors should a community have and market in order to attract young talent. So we asked respondents to rank a list of 18 location factors. And what you see here are the top 6 highest ranked factors. You'll see it includes affordable housing, cost of living, crime rate, ability to live, work, and play in one location without a long commute, available and quality health care, and lastly, diverse economy and employment opportunities. What did not rank even among the top 10 factors was a strong public transportation system, which is something that people assume is a mandatory for younger generations. However, it looks like from this research, they're more interested in the essentials like safety, health, and jobs. Another important finding to note when we did our talent research last year, which included multiple generations, is that we keep seeing that housing and cost of living, again, are top factors for talent when looking at locations. And lastly, we wanted to ask point blank, what tools could a community give you to help you make a relocation decision? And overwhelmingly, 80% cited the chance to visit and experience the location firsthand. So despite the rise of digital and the importance of digital, while it's still very important in terms of finding jobs, in order to really understand a location and consider a relocation, talent needs to see the product firsthand, which really underscores the importance of tourism as well to expose more people to your location. 65% also said that the ability to talk to someone in their industry about living there and working there would be helpful. And then nearly half of people also said relocation packages and just information about the new location. So now that you've seen the research and we're understanding what exactly millennial and Gen Z talent looks for in careers, jobs, and locations, we wanted to give you 5 takeaways that you can actually apply to your talent attraction marketing right now to start attracting this coveted segment of talent. And the first takeaway is start talent marketing soon. We saw from the research that people are making career decisions much earlier than we thought, usually at the high school level. And one community that's really tackling this issue head on is Cleveland County, North Carolina, which is a rural community right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And they had the issue of hundreds of open manufacturing jobs and plenty of millennials locally and nearby, but not enough of them realizing that A, manufacturing was a viable career choice, and B, that these good paying jobs were right in their backyard in Cleveland County. So what we did was create a pocket brochure that really outlined the benefits of working in manufacturing, explaining that it's not just machine operation, it can mean marketing as well. They have great benefits. There's great training opportunities available. And we basically spelled out, here's what it's like to work in manufacturing in Cleveland County, and here's how you can thrive in this region. And the best part about these pocket brochures is actually where they put them. So Cleveland County was smart enough to realize that these need to be in high school guidance counselors' offices, they need to be at DMVs, they need to be even at baseball stadiums, and they really distributed these far and wide to make sure that they were being seen and used. And the brochures were also matched with a one-stop shop talent website with the Charlotte's Backyard brand. And one great thing about this website is that they included success stories of people who realized that manufacturing was the career for them really early on. So the woman you see here is Emily Bolton, and it spells out her story that when she was in high school, she realized she could make a lot more money going to manufacturing and training for that. So again, going back to our research, We know that a lot of people would be willing to shift career paths, but they're just not aware of the training resources available to them. So I think really telling the story to millennials, to Gen Z makes a difference to show the different type of career paths you could take and where those career paths are an option. Takeaway number 2, market your internships. We saw that 70% of our respondents were either willing or on the fence to stay in the location they attended college. But as we know, it's not the number one choice that people think of when looking for employment opportunities right out of school. So how can you bridge that gap between people locally not knowing about your internships? Well, one community that we work with that really capitalized on the talent right in their backyard is Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And they figured out a way to really break the college bubble of college students not being aware of the great opportunities in their own city. Louisiana State University and Southern University are right in Baton Rouge's backyard. And what they launched was a program called Intern BR, and it solves a common issue that communities have, and that's simply to connect local company internships to local talent in the city. And a really great element of this program is that while these students are in the Intern BR program, they're exposed to everything the community offers. So a lot of times we see, people do internships, they're going into the job, but they're not thinking of the community holistically outside of that job and outside of that company. So that's something that Baton Rouge has tackled really head on. Number 3, capitalize on personal connections. So yes, the assumption may be that millennials are tied to their phones, they only speak through social media, but when it comes to jobs, just like other generations, they rely on personal connections. People are looking to their friends and family to find out about employment opportunities. So how can you as a community capitalize on those personal connections and particularly your residents? One case study that has capitalized on personal connections comes from Charleston, South Carolina, who has a tech talent initiative called Charleston Open Source. And the mission of this initiative is to simply connect people interested in working in tech to jobs and startups in Charleston, South Carolina. What we did to capitalize on personal connections is launch what we call a digital ambassadors program for them. And it's essentially a social media-based program that connects people who either live in Charleston, used to live in Charleston, or just want to learn more about Charleston to social media. And we send them content on Charleston jobs, Charleston rankings, living in Charleston, anything Charleston to them for them to share on their social networks with their friends and family who are connected to them on social media. So for example, in May, Charleston ranked as a best city to start a career. And instead of just posting that through the program website, we got it out through friends and family through the Digital Ambassadors program by saying, hey, have you seen this cool news? Charleston's latest ranking. Please share this news with your social media networks. And through an email, these digital ambassadors are able to share this news with the click of a button, so that people like Patrick Alessi, who is a software engineer who relocated to Charleston from the Northeast actually, can share this news far and wide with his social network. And again, we think this is a more strategic approach than advertising because it is, again, using those personal connections and sharing jobs through that. And number 4, make tourism work for talent. So a lot of times I think we think of economic development and tourism as two siloed efforts, very different goals. But when we look at the research and see that firsthand experience is the top way that people want to learn about locations, we really think it's important for tourism and economic development to support each other and sync up on efforts to make sure that you're turning tourists into potential talent. And one community that we've seen do this really well and very recently is actually the state of Vermont, which is faced with a large aging population. And recently, the governor and the Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing really stepped up together to launch what they called a Stay to Stay initiative. And essentially, the goal of this program is to transform the 13 million people that come to Vermont each year into permanent residents. So what they do with this program is they have a tailored weekend that puts you in unique hotels and communities throughout Vermont. And as a part of that weekend, almost like a vacation package, you also get to meet with local employers and local residents who can really act as almost a landing pad into relocating into Vermont. Now, a lot of communities have great talent initiatives like this, great talent programs, but what makes the difference is that people are aware of them. And what we've done is really help take this news viral to the media. U.S. News and World reported about this initiative. Vermont taps tourists to bolster workforce. Bloomberg Businessweek wrote, "This weekend, aging Vermont will try to make tourists into residents." And Livability has written, "Vermonters Wanted, How Vermont is Turning Tourists into Residents." And lastly, takeaway 5, remember to go beyond your backyard for talent. I think initially we launched this research thinking it would give us a lot of good takeaways on how to keep talent in your backyard. But what we're finding actually more and more is that communities can actually strategically capitalize on the fact that college students do want to try new locations and they're open to relocating if it's for the right job. But how do you figure out where to go beyond your backyard with your talent attraction campaign? And one way we think is great to do that is to do targeted talent research. So we look at things like migration patterns, industry occupation concentrations to really identify what are the top 5 best target talent markets for your community, because we realize that not every community has $1 million marketing budget to go with a national campaign. So instead, stay targeted and survey those target markets to really understand perceptions of your community. You may find that even though you're a Midwest city, that someone in LA is very interested in relocating to you because they have a positive perception of your city. So with that, we would love to open it up to the group for Q&A and answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so it looks like we had a couple questions come in during the course of the webinar. And the first one is, where do communities go wrong in marketing to millennials and Gen Z? So I'll let Rebecca answer after I answer, but we conducted research last year that surveyed a wider group, wider population. We weren't looking at just one age cohort. And what we surprisingly found was that there was really no significant difference in how different generations responded. So I think, there's almost too much emphasis on sort of, what's going to be unique to the millennials, when really they're looking at very basic needs. Again, it's, they're very concerned about housing affordability and housing availability, very interested in a safe and secure location. Again, job stability, earning potential. Those are all things that no matter what generation you're looking at are all important. So I think it's trying to perhaps narrow your emphasis too much. Rebecca, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, as a millennial myself, I can say that millennials, at the end of the day, we're just people, and we do have those basic needs that every other generation prioritizes, like money, like salary and cost of living and affordable housing. So I think really for all generations, if you can't market a higher average salary, at least market take-home pay and market your unique value as a community, because at the end of the day, I think money talks more than anything when it comes to attracting talent.
Okay, great. So we had two questions come in that I think are somewhat similar. One is more specific, but one of the questions is, what were the numbers for Vermont and how successful was the campaign? And that ties into another question that we received, which is really how should an economic development organization measure the success of a talent attraction campaign? So I think it's a question of metrics. And Rebecca, did you want to speak specifically about the experience you've had with some of the communities you've worked with?
Sure. So I'll address the general metrics question first, but I think in terms of measuring a talent attraction marketing campaign, first and foremost, it just depends on what the marketing tactic is. So if it's media relations, that measurement should be advertising equivalency and impressions. If it's social media, you want to track engagement you're getting. And at the end of the day, I think the true mark of a successful talent attraction marketing campaign is simply from your local employers and asking them, is this working for you? Are you using this marketing? Because if you're doing marketing but it's not actually being used by employers who are the ones on the front lines with talent, then it's not successful. But we actually did just get the numbers in for Vermont pretty recently on their initiatives, and the client has actually been swamped, I know, dealing with all the inquiries they're getting from the Vermont campaign. So some metrics, they've gotten thousands of users going to actually vermontvacation.com as a part of referring back to the stay-to-stay initiative. But I have more detailed reports and metrics on that, so I would love to post that and share that with the group as well, but I don't want to share too much since it is a proprietary program.
Great. Okay, so then we have a question here on the methodology. The question is, can you reiterate who took the survey, how it was administered in terms of how we found the survey takers, and how many individuals participated in, and also when it was conducted? Certainly. So this was a survey of 1,000 individuals between the ages of 19 and 25. We surveyed in every state in the United States, so it was statistically representative of the population from each state. And it was conducted very, very recently. We actually conducted the survey over March and April, a 2-week period that covered March and April of 2018. So very, very recent data. We actually relied on the survey was conducted online, we worked with a panel provider to actually help us identify participants that met our qualifications. We did want individuals with at least a high school degree or equivalent, again, within those age cohorts. And again, we did want it to be statistically representative, so they helped us identify the candidates and the respondents for the survey and helped us make sure that we were getting quality responses. So that was sort of the methodology behind the survey. Another question we just got in was, can you speak at all to the impact, if any, of professional networking groups in terms of building those personal connections and attracting young talent? Rebecca, did you want to speak to that? Or
that's a great question. I think in our research we were actually surprised to see that alumni networks were not being used as much as we thought they should be. And I think what that comes down to is really the quality of those alumni networks and what they're communicating to those audiences. But I do think young professional groups and alumni networks are one of the most underutilized resources that communities often don't think to use to get out the word about jobs and living in their community.
Great. Another question, can you please go into a bit more detail on the digital influencer program and how to choose the influencers? How do you ensure that their reach is wide enough to get into the markets you want to attract, and does it work better for specific job categories?
Great question. So for the Digital Ambassadors Program for Charleston Open Source, it's specifically targeted to people who are passionate about tech, but we don't close the program. Although we started it off with invite only and really targeting people who worked in tech, who had a connection to Charleston either currently or previously. But in general, we think that really the wider, the better for these types of programs, because you never know who's in someone's personal connections. So for example, I'm in marketing, and maybe I wouldn't have been targeted to sign up for the program initially, but I have plenty of friends in tech and plenty of friends who are considering working in tech. And not to mention, working in tech doesn't just mean you're a software engineer. It could mean you are in marketing or in management or another role, even administrative. So I do think for digital ambassadors programs and digital influencer programs, it is okay to get a little out of your comfort zone and out of your target with that, because at the end of the day, every resident you should be looking at as kind of a potential billboard for your community, and you never know what they're going to say to who at any moment about your community.
Great. And then I think we just have one last question, unless anybody wants to get in under the wire and submit another one. But the last question is, even though you say millennials are interested in different types of locations, they seem to be moving to major cities. Why is that? So I think, yes, I think that when recent graduates are, trying to decide where to live, a lot of times they are drawn to sort of the major hubs. There is, just because of the sheer size of some of these population centers, they do have a more diverse and larger pool of job opportunities, and that could be very appealing, as well as just sort of the quality of life factors. But chances are that's not where they will permanently relocate. So I think that ultimately it's kind of they're looking for a new location, they're looking for something different than their current situation perhaps, and they want sort of that exciting urban environment that they may not have experienced before. So that may be sort of a first step in terms of a move, but what we've seen is that when they sort of progress along their career path, that's probably not where they will ultimately relocate. So it's not a permanent situation. Oh, and then we had one more comment. We just wanted to wish Rebecca actually a happy birthday today. So not everybody gets to do a webinar on her birthday. So we'd like just to shout out to her to have a very happy birthday.
Thank you, Melissa. There's no better way than to celebrate about talking about talent attraction research. As many people know, huge talent attraction and economic development nerds. So thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Well, lastly, thank you everyone for joining and for all the great questions. If you have not had a chance to download the report yet, it is on our website, www.aboutdci.com. There's a big red bar up at the top that you can click and download it. Or my email's here. Feel free to email me really with any questions, or wanting to look at the report, or even doing a personalized webinar. We love talking about talent, and we love especially learning what other communities are doing in this realm. So thank you so much, everyone, for being on this webinar today.